I remember sitting across from a gentleman not too long ago, 72, well-dressed, polite. He had that quiet look in his eyes, the kind that speaks of years behind him, not regrets exactly, but questions. He leaned forward slightly and said, "Doc, I've been doing things the same way for most of my life, but lately, something feels off." He wasn't sick, no major medications, no recent surgeries, but something inside him felt dulled. He couldn't quite name it, but I recognized it. It wasn't just about his body, it was about how he was living in that body. And what was surprising was this. It came down to how he was touching himself. Not the act itself, not the choice, but the habits behind it. Habits that had gone unchecked, unnoticed, and unspoken for decades. I'm Dr. Thomas Leighton. I've worked in urology for over 4 decades, mostly with older men. Retired servicemen, factory workers, teachers, grandfathers. I've heard thousands of stories, some whispered with shame, others told with a nervous laugh. But behind nearly all of them is the same question. Is this normal? So if you're here today wondering whether something has changed, or more importantly, if there's something you can do about it, I want to say this clearly. There is. But the first step is understanding what's really going on. And it starts by looking at the private habits we've carried for years sometimes, without even realizing the cost. If what I'm saying resonates with you so far, type 1 in the comments. If you're unsure, type 0. Either way, I'm honored that you're still here. Let's begin with the first, and perhaps the most common, silent mistake. Using explicit videos as your only source of stimulation. Now, I'm not here to judge. Let's get that out of the way. I've met men in their 60s and 70s who've quietly confided, "Doc, I just don't feel much anymore." They often whisper it, unsure of what it means. So I ask gently, how often do you rely on videos to get aroused? And nearly every time, they look down not because they're ashamed, but because deep down, they suspect something isn't right. Here's what we know. By the time you reach 60 or beyond, your dopamine system, the brain's engine for pleasure and motivation, doesn't fire the way it did when you were 25. It's slower, more sensitive, easier to overwhelm. And when you regularly flood it with intense, fast-paced imagery, something subtle but serious begins to happen. Your brain, in an effort to cope, starts to dial everything down. Pleasure, emotion, connection, it all begins to fade. You don't feel as much. Your body doesn't respond like it used to. And real intimacy, whether solo or with a partner, starts to feel distant, even impossible. Most men blame age, but the truth? It's not age. It's overstimulation. Think of your nervous system like an old radio. You can still tune in, but if the frequency is blasted too high for too long, the signal becomes fuzzy, distorted. You lose the warmth in the music. If you're nodding along, if you've noticed this soft kind of numbness creeping in, I want you to pause. This isn't about quitting everything cold turkey. It's about balance. It's about returning your body to a place where touch feels like touch again, where presence matters more than performance. Now, let's talk about something seemingly unrelated, but just as critical. Masturbating while sitting on the toilet. Sounds silly, maybe, but trust me, it's a pattern I've seen more times than I can count. For many men, the bathroom becomes the only private space left. The door locks, the distractions fade, and you feel in control. But the physical position, the way your body folds when you sit hunched forward, elbows on knees, back rounded, creates the perfect storm. It compresses the pelvic floor. It restricts blood flow. It places direct pressure on your prostate. And here's the real issue. As we age, those areas don't rebound the way they used to. They become vulnerable, sensitive. A little bit of stress adds up fast. I've had men complain about lingering groin aches, trouble fully emptying the bladder, or even dribbling after urination. They never thought it might be linked to posture, but in many cases, it is. Your body wasn't meant to receive pleasure in a position of compression and stress. So, if this sounds familiar, I'd encourage you to change the setting. Stand, recline. Use a space where your hips can relax, where circulation can flow freely. It's not about shame. It's about giving your body a chance to breathe. And if you've ever felt like you're just getting it over with, Rushing through the process because it feels like a chore, then this next one is for you. Rushing the experience. This might be the most common habit I see. I've had men tell me, "Doc, I just want to get it done. I don't have time for anything more." But the body doesn't respond to speed the same way it did decades ago. In fact, rushing sends the exact opposite message. It puts your nervous system on edge. It makes your heart race, constricts your blood vessels, and robs you of the hormones that actually make the experience restorative: oxytocin, dopamine, serotonin. You may climax, but feel drained afterward. You may finish, but feel disconnected. And over time, your body learns this pattern. Pleasure becomes shallow, sensation fades, and the worst part, you might think it's just aging. But it's not. It's a habit. So what do? Slow down. Turn it into a practice, not a performance. Let your body relearn the rhythm of slowness. Let it feel without being rushed. That's where the magic still lives in, the moments you allow, not the minutes you count. Now, as we talk about slowing down, we also need to explore what's holding you up from the inside. There's a hidden set of muscles most men ignore, muscles that, when left untrained, weaken over time. They're responsible for erection quality, bladder control, even sexual confidence. And in part 2, I'll explain what they are and how simply waking them up can transform how you feel from the inside out. Let's talk about a part of your body that most men never think about until something starts going wrong. I'm referring to your pelvic floor. Now, if you've never heard of it, don't feel embarrassed. Most men haven't. But after 60, this hidden system becomes one of the most important allies you have. It sits beneath your bladder and prostate, supporting your sexual organs like a foundation supports a home. And when that foundation weakens, everything above it begins to wobble slowly, quietly, but unmistakably. I remember a man in his late 60s, a proud father, a former athlete, strong in frame, still jogging every morning. But he came to me with a concern he couldn't explain. "Doc, everything else works, but it just doesn't feel strong down there anymore." He wasn't talking about testosterone or blood flow. He was talking about a deeper loss of control. His climax felt weaker. He struggled with occasional dribbling after urination, and he had no idea why. What he didn't realize was this: his pelvic floor had gone dormant. Years of sitting at a desk, years of tension held in the lower abdomen, years of never thinking about that part of the body, all of it had taken a quiet toll. When you masturbate without engaging the pelvic floor, or worse, when you push downward during climax, you're placing pressure where you should be offering support. That pressure wears out the nerves. It weakens muscle tone, and over time, it leads to issues that most men just chalk up to getting older. But it doesn't have to be that way. There's a simple, gentle way to reawaken these muscles. The next time you feel arousal begin to build, try this. Gently contract the same muscles you'd use to stop a stream of urine. Hold for a few seconds. Then release. That's your pelvic floor. It's subtle, but powerful. With regular practice, you'll not only regain control, you'll begin to feel more sensation, more presence, and yes, more confidence. Now, speaking of presence, let's talk about frequency. How often is too much or too little? Because when it comes to this part of your life, balance matters more than you think. Masturbating too often, or not enough, it's a topic most men shy away from. I've had patients nervously ask, "Doc, am I doing it too much?" Others confess that it's been months, even years, and they're not sure if that's okay. Let me tell you something I've learned after decades in practice. The extremes can both be harmful. Some men masturbate frequently out of habit, not desire. It becomes a routine, something to fill time, distract from emotion, or fight boredom. But when it happens too often, your body can't fully recover. Prostate tissue becomes irritated. Energy drains. And worst of all, your mind starts to detach from real intimacy. It turns into a loop. You do it, but feel less. So you do it again, hoping to feel more. But the spark keeps fading. Not because something's broken, because the nervous system is exhausted. Now, on the flip side, I've worked with men who gave it up entirely. Sometimes due to medication, sometimes guilt, sometimes just the belief that I'm too old for that now. But here's the problem. Sexual energy isn't just about climax. It's about circulation. Arousal, whether or not it leads to orgasm, brings blood to the genitals. It nourishes nerve endings. It keeps tissue healthy and responsive. When that flow stops entirely, the system begins to shrink, quite literally. Atrophy sets in, sensitivity drops, and before long, it feels as if desire itself has vanished. So what's the right frequency? There's no one-size-fits-all answer, but for most men over 60, I've found that once or twice a week, done intentionally and with care, is a healthy rhythm. Enough to maintain function without overloading the system. Enough to keep the door open to connection without draining your reserves. But again, it's not about numbers. It's about listening. Your body has changed. Its signals are softer now. But they're still there waiting for you to tune in. And even when frequency is just right, there's one more habit that can undo all that progress often without you even realizing it. Using too much pressure. This one surprises many men. In fact, it used to surprise me until I began seeing the patterns. Patient after patient would sit across from me and say something like, "Doc, I don't feel much anymore." Or, "It's taking more effort than it used to." At first glance, it makes sense. As sensitivity decreases with age, the natural instinct is to grip tighter, to press harder, to try to wake things up with more force. But here's the truth. Your body doesn't need force. It needs care. The nerves in your penis, especially in later life, are delicate. And when they're constantly exposed to aggressive friction, hard squeezing, or pressure from surfaces not meant for that purpose, they begin to break down. You might not notice it all at once, but over time, micro tears form beneath the surface. Scar tissue builds, blood flow decreases, and in some cases, even curvature and pain develop something that can be difficult, even impossible, to reverse. I've seen scans, I've read reports, but most of all, I've heard the sorrow in a man's voice when he says, "I wish I had known sooner." But there's a deeper cost beyond the physical. When you treat pleasure like a battle, something you have to wrestle out of your body, you start to lose the joy in it. It becomes work. It becomes frustration. And eventually, it becomes another reminder of what you feel you've lost. But you haven't lost it. Not completely. Not yet. What your body needs now is not more intensity, but more intentionality. Touch with presence, move with awareness, and above all, trust that the gentler you are, the more you will feel. Now, there's one final habit we need to explore. It goes deeper than all the rest. It's not about technique, or posture, or muscles. It's about the one thing most older men never talk about: how they feel while touching themselves. And in part 3, we'll uncover why emotion, connection, and intention may be the most powerful and most overlooked tools you have left. Let me ask you something quietly. When was the last time you truly felt something while touching yourself? I don't mean physical sensation alone. I mean a sense of warmth, a moment of connection, a quiet gratitude for the body that has carried you through so many years. Because what I've seen again and again is this. Many older men go through the motions. They treat self-pleasure like a habit, a way to pass time, a relief from loneliness, or sometimes just a reminder that something still works. But behind closed doors, the spark is gone, not because the body has failed, but because the emotion, the intention, has faded. This brings us to the final, and perhaps most heartbreaking mistake. Masturbating without emotion, connection, or purpose. You see, with age often comes silence. The world doesn't ask how you're feeling anymore. People assume you've figured it all out, or that your days of longing are behind you. But that's not how it works. Inside every man I've ever spoken to, whether he's 62 or 82, there's still a flicker of desire, a longing for closeness, for meaning, for the quiet reassurance that he's still here, still alive, still capable of joy. When you remove intention from the act, when touch becomes mechanical, empty, or simply something to get over with, you're training your body to associate pleasure with numbness. You might still climax, But the body doesn't release the same healing chemistry. Oxytocin, dopamine, the very compounds that lift your mood and support your heart, stay locked away. And the result? You're left feeling flat, disconnected, like your body did something, but your spirit didn't come along for the ride. I've had men tell me, "Doc, I don't even know why I still bother." And every time, I say the same thing, because it still matters. Your body may be older, it may respond differently, but it hasn't stopped needing care. And more importantly, it hasn't stopped deserving love. Even in solitude, touch can be sacred. It can be a moment to say, "Thank you." A moment to feel into the places that still work, even if they're slower. A moment to remind yourself that you are still worthy of sensation, of presence, of connection. You don't need to light candles or play music unless you want to, but you do need to slow down, to breathe, to ask yourself gently, "Why am I doing this today?" Not out of guilt, not out of boredom, but out of curiosity, out of kindness, out of respect for the only body you'll ever have. Now, let's bring everything together. We've talked about the 7 quiet mistakes men often make. Relying on overstimulating content that numbs the brain, using poor physical positions that harm the pelvic floor, rushing the experience, turning it into a task instead of a connection, neglecting the pelvic muscles that keep you strong and in control, losing balance in how often you engage with your own body, using too much pressure, mistaking force for feeling, and finally touching without emotion, without intention, without meaning. If you recognized yourself in any of those habits, I want you to know you're not alone, not even close. These patterns don't happen because we're weak, or lazy, or foolish. They happen because no one ever taught us how to adapt as we age. The truth is, the rules change. Your circulation slows. Your nerves become more sensitive. Your prostate needs more space, more softness, more awareness. And most of all, your heart needs to be included again. I've met men who gave up on this part of life entirely, who assumed that once the fire faded, it was never coming back. But I've also met men in their 70s and 80s who rediscovered themselves, who relearned how to touch with care, who realized that aging isn't a closed door, it's a new kind of doorway. One that requires patience, yes, but one that also offers a kind of richness youth can't understand. You see, this isn't just about avoiding damage. It's about reclaiming something sacred, the quiet power of being alive in your own body. There's no shame in wanting pleasure. There's no shame in needing comfort. And there's certainly no shame in feeling deeply, even when you're alone. So here's what I want to leave you with. Start where you are. Even if you've made all 7 of these mistakes, start now. Be gentle. Touch with presence. Use intention, not urgency. Breathe before you begin. Pause when you need to. And most importantly, listen to your body, not with frustration, but with curiosity. This body of yours, it has carried you for decades. It has survived. It has loved. It has been through more than most will ever know. And it is still yours, still speaking to you, even if the voice is softer now, still longing to be felt, still deserving of care. Your best years are not behind you. They are in front of you in the quiet moments you reclaim, in the way you choose to treat yourself when no one else is looking. If this message touched you, even a little, please click the like button. It helps keep this message alive. And if you're still here, still listening, I want to thank you, not just for your time, but for your openness, for your willingness to feel again. Type 1 in the comments if you're ready to begin this next chapter with care. Type 0 if you're still unsure. Either way, I see you, and I respect your journey. Until next time, be well, be kind to yourself, and never stop listening to what your body is quietly trying to say.